Well, he's got a lot on his plate. Welcome back to the channel, and given my track record of videos so far, you will have learned the word traditional is seldom used to describe this content. So today's Sonic Adventure will be looking to my favourite part of the community, the ROM hacking scene. More interestingly, the Sonic Hacking Contest. An annual event for all kinds of talents, whether that's showcasing restored prototype versions, improvements to existing games, or sometimes entirely new experiences using older games as the base. And then we have the joke entries. My favourite realm. Here, the objective is simple.
Funny.
And from this, some amazing works have been made. Again, yes, a well-crafted original experience is always going to be praised in high regard, but this still took effort. However, for today, I want to take one of these joke hacks further than ever intended. So, to get this spiky blue ball rolling, here is Sonic 2 XL. The more attentive of you may see the, subtle design changes made here, and it's up to you to get to the end of the level without overloading Sonic's chaos cholesterol. Eat too many and Sonic will learn he and Elvis Presley had a lot in common. So where the rings were 1 for the money and 2 for the show, we now want to avoid them entirely. But what if I want to beat the game and unlock Super Sonic? Thus, the process became just a bit more complicated. Let's dive in and address some of the mechanics as we go along, shall we? Sonic will get to a new level of obesity with every 5 rings, with level 6 being a confirmed death. Given we need 50 rings to activate a checkpoint and try for an emerald, our ever-growing body fat percentage poses a challenge. Now, Emerald Hill Zone is interesting for this challenge, as if you're knowledgeable enough about Sonic 2, you'll know that you can unlock Super Sonic as early as the first boss fight. Rings will always respawn after each special stage, and there's enough checkpoint posts around the zone to manage it. But we're at a slight issue here. Given one unfortunately timed trail of rings will have us considering a salad, and after about 15 rings, our ability to function is somewhat hindered. And then factor in you only need about 30 rings to outmatch your metabolism, the math isn't mathing. So we need a solution for our chubby conundrum. And if any of you are on a weight loss journey like myself, you're gonna hate hearing these next 3 words yet again. Diet and exercise. Our method of shedding the pounds really is just to not collect any more rings and run off the excess. It sounds simple, but remember Sonic games are somewhat abundant on the rings, so making this a no-ring run in itself is going to be a challenge. And not to spoil the video too much, but if you think there will be a dash panel that ends up being our demise, you'd be right. The issue is, as before, we also want to get all the emeralds, but as previously stated, without working that treadmill into the ground, getting the ring requirements is certain death. As you can tell, we're at a crossroads here. So I summoned all 5 brain cells and devised a strategy. The plan is simple. Arrive at the stage and collect a good chunk of the rings. Attempt to hold on to them as we run backwards and forwards over and over, and just try not to get hit, as that will just set us back to square one. And then after making a few motivational TikToks, we get back to the gorge. Oh, and by the way, no, getting hit does not reverse the damage, so we can't just intentionally run into something and hope that will save us. From here, we should have about 50 rings, and we now need to find a checkpoint. Though it's likely you'll have found one whilst ring hunting, so backtracking there shouldn't be too hard. Then there's the matter of the special stages themselves. Good luck, even with being used to these by now. Tails always likes to remind me he's here and has no issues with losing our rings. So if just getting to the special stage was hard enough for you, sorry to say, that's 50% of the challenge. But you see the general loop here. I personally would recommend only going for 1 emerald per stage, as running off all those onion rings and then recollecting them does take a bit of time. So how did I get on? Well, you saw from the footage just how Emerald Hill Act 1 went, perfectly according to plan. So Act 2, I decided to be greedy and go for 2 emeralds. That was wishful thinking, as between getting hit due to limited mobility and just not having the jump height to go over checkpoint signs, I managed to accidentally relegate myself to just the last one of the stage. So begrudgingly, I grabbed the second and only other emerald will get this act. This stage also taught me, despite my years of playing Sonic 2, just being 1 onion ring away from a heart attack negated any prior experience and instilled anxiety. Also, the amount of backwards and forwards to lose weight just felt random. At some points, you could just shuffle side to side and that would be fine. And other times you'd find entire paths and that just did nothing. One to look into. And while I also thought about restarting runs to do things a bit differently, it felt like that would be disingenuous and almost cheating, like how Sonic is cheating on his diet. Now would also be a good time to set a boundary here for this video. While yes, I am making a shitpost about a blue speedy hedgehog who suddenly has to deal with the consequences of binge eating, under no circumstances are any of these jokes aimed at anyone of a larger size or struggling in their journey of self-content. And while I always like reading your humorous comments, just try and keep them respectful. Unless they're about Robotnik here, his Bald Nabil can do one. So with clear expectation that this was going to be hell, onto Chemical Plant we go. Act 1 starts us off with that familiar tune, and never have I felt so anxious to play this stage. The dash panels are everywhere, and as are the rings. Not to mention, Act 1 doesn't really have any checkpoints that you would just happen to come across. So for Act 1, we just need to pussyfoot through this stage and hope for the best. But even when I was trying to be careful, one softlock later was enough to tell me that I need to devise a strategy here. Okay, he eventually succumbed to his mukbang, but that's not the point. It kinda sucked, but Act 1 turned out to be a lost cause, because the time I spent gathering 50 rings and running off the weight, it turned out it was already somewhat impossible to get an emerald here. As mentioned previously, the checkpoints just aren't in an obvious spot, and just getting to them would have been a bigger challenge given Sonic's depreciating mobility. This will also spur a reoccurring theme number 2 of this video, wasting my time. You're lucky this is a supercut journey, and you're not watching me run backwards and forwards for 3 minutes at a time, just to realise I'd already gone past the checkpoint, and the game has locked me away from it. Act 2, however, turned out to be slightly more prosperous. I spent a good chunk of my lives trying to work out a route that got me to a checkpoint, nabbed me 50 rings, and didn't catapult me into an early death, but some parts became impossible with Sonic's ever-growing appetite, and other bits became a complete death trap. Once I learnt this ring box here was not my friend, the oncoming slaughter of speed ramps and rings were a bit more manageable. I ended up only getting 1 emerald this act, despite Tails' attempts to jeopardize that, but again we get to the boss fight, and now would be a good time to summarize these question mark boxes. They're essentially an Ozempic monitor. They get rid of all your excess hedgehog, but the sin doesn't go with it. It wasn't really worth mentioning earlier, as they're few and far in between, so we're not going to be relying on them. Aquatic Ruin Zone is next, and 4 emeralds remain. Let's see if we can get that number down, shall we? Act 1 again is sparse of any checkpoints, so again, we're going to have to get creative. Our main checkpoint is on the top path, but by the time we reach it, we're a few rings short, so we're going to have to try a different approach. We get the main rings at the start, run back and forth, grab the 10 ring box, run back and forth, then we journey to the first checkpoint post, ensuring we're fit enough to jump over it and collect any remaining rings. It's here I sighted a second post, and greed was the enemy. Run back, get the original star post, get the emerald, and with enough time, we repeat the same process and grab our 5th emerald. Following that resounding success, all we had to do was cross the line. Well, that was bullshit. One slightly more careful run later, and on to Act 2. Here, 1 emerald is fine. 1 emerald would have been fine, if we could even get that. I'm not sure if this was just a skill issue or what, but goddamn did this stage not go well for me. I really tried to find the perfect route for this stage, but all 3 of my worst nightmares reared their ugly heads. Over-binging, over-drinking, and overextending the reach of the level. I thought I fucked it up by getting this checkpoint here, and then holding hope for the pre-boss checkpoint, but nope. Had to get hit and lose my rings. But we're still on track into what I'm dreading is possibly the worst zone we're going to face. Casino Night Zone, and while the more cultured of you are itching for that roulette table, this is the one time I think not winning may be in our best interests. Actually, what does happen if we get the jackpot? Well, I can't say I'm surprised. We have 2 emeralds remaining, and I'm confident Casino Night can make that happen. Immediately into Act 1, I learnt my confidence was misplaced. Despite the hold gambling has on me, we're repeating trope number 2, wasting time. Even with me trying to be careful not to be too over-gluttonous all at once, and shredding the excess where possible, I went past what feels like the only checkpoint in Act 1, and despite my attempts to go back to it, this act was a waste of time. Again, had I practiced this ROM hack and not just the special stages, I'm sure I'd be singing a different tune, but so far my gamble has not paid off. But to be fair, when does it ever? Oh wait, that one time I won big! Act 2 onwards, and here I decided it was time to lock in. At this point, the feeling of the game was starting to come to me. I had a good understanding now, and I knew all I needed to do was find 1 mid-stage checkpoint, and the pre-boss fight checkpoint would welcome me with open arms. So I journeyed through the level, and with some careful planning, got to a checkpoint, lost some weight, and achieved Emerald 6. Then a similar process for our final Emerald, where, dear God, we've done it. If you haven't noticed, this is only my 5th video on this channel, and if my over-the-top editing wasn't distracting you enough, you'll realize pacing really isn't my forte here. So now I had all 7 emeralds, I was starting to wonder how quickly I'd blast through the rest of the game. 1 Robotnik rumble later, and we're gonna find out. Okay, so checkpoints are no longer the focus here, but damn it do I want to see Fat Supersonic. Hilltop Zone is up next, and I want to top out on rings, but not on my heart rate. Act 1 is more about spacing out when and where you get the rings, and if you're careful enough and take a few run breaks, you'll be fine. But hey, look what I got! Okay, so Supersonic might be a little bit bugged, but by that I mean, Sonic, why can't you move there? Okay. My bad. Okay, well I at least got to say I achieved Supersonic, so we'll play a bit more carefully and run right on to Act 2. So, how do I put this lightly? Fuck Act 2! Turns out Hilltop Zone is where the developers decided they needed to check Sonic's jump height, as there are now a number of ledges that require a full jump to get over. As you can imagine, a slight problem for this portly porcupine. Just one level of obesity is enough to completely render some of these obstacles impossible. And again, it's unclear why I lose weight running back and forth here, but not here. It gets worse though, as the second half of this level really requires some strategy. Let's lay out the issues. This lava section is fine, but just be careful not to get too many rings here, as you'll make some of those jumps challenging. Then be careful not to scoff too many rings, as you may get a bit chubby, and if should that happen, pray you don't then fall into these double springs. Fun fact, you'd think it would help you lose weight, but no, there's no escape. So you'll just have to wait to time out and try again. I tried a number of ideas and just none of them seemed to work. The closest I got for a while was getting through the lava rise with just 4 rings, run off any fat because this spring requires we collect more, and then try the second lava room. Again, avoiding rings is surprisingly difficult here, and while you could say collecting a few isn't going to be an issue, it only takes 5 rings to render this section impossible. And in the one attempt I did get it, I ran into impossible ledge number 2, and with running seeming to no longer work, it's getting difficult to say the least. And there I was thinking we'd just race through the rest of the game, but nope, evidence is suggesting otherwise. So back to the drawing board thanks to this 1-up monitor that keeps respawning, and we're off to launch Operation Cheat Day. We can see here from the checkpoint there's no Zempic monitor, which, while I mentioned earlier not to rely on, they're becoming a bit more commonplace now. So we'll start by going backwards and letting Sonic here enjoy a nice big meal of onion rings, and while there's no sauce to them and they're likely getting cold by now, they are surprisingly integral to our plan. We'll then ride this platform and revert back to our slim self. Now we move on, collecting even more rings in this lava section and finding the second monitor all the way to the right. See, the developer did want to make this possible. Finally, we want to do some back and forth to lose any of that excess, and eventually we'll have 50 rings and we can pop Supersonic. We can finally get over these ledges. Looking back, this would have been near impossible without Supersonic, and I'm sure it's doable, but Sonic would like me to go full Ramadan mode to do it. But with a quicker Sonic, I can take a quick opportunity to introduce this video's sponsor, FiGGYZ. I know, right? The new collectible line from First 4 Figures, spanning tons of familiar franchises such as Street Fighter, Mega Man, and in my package's case, Sonic the Hedgehog. Because what else were they gonna send? These new wave of collectibles seriously look awesome, with this metal Sonic one currently being my favourite. Each one comes with a reversible metal background, allowing multiple ways to display them, and you can swap them around with other FiGGYZ backgrounds, giving you even more options. I put this one on the fridge among the many other items I have, right between this nice one and this bottle opener. I can't uncensor it, but it's a bottle opener, I assure you. These aren't just high quality collectible magnets that come with swappable backgrounds, a wall mount magnet for even more display options, and the chance to unpack a gold, silver or bronze plate with their rarities up on screen now. You can also install the FiGGYZ Collectors app and use it to scan your FiGGYZ into your own digital catalogue, detailing its serial number and even which edition, which made filming this sponsorship segment somewhat difficult as it meant I had to unbox a first edition Metal Sonic. If this is worth thousands down the line, I'm going to scream. Register your interest today by using my link in the description below, or copy this lovely string of numbers on screen now. By signing up, you'll get an email when FiGGYZ Early Access is ready to launch, and you'll even get a unique discount code of 5% off your first order. So be sure to sign up today and get your hands on these genuinely awesome looking collectibles, and thanks once again to FiGGYZ for the sponsor. Back on track, it's somewhat surprising just how quickly my issues went from not getting enough rings before the checkpoint to now having too many. The emeralds were no longer the focus, but now survival is. To say I wasn't feeling overly optimistic about the later zones would be an understatement. So maybe Mystic Cave can be a bit more rapid? It was! Mystic Cave was a delightful change of pace here, with the entire zone only taking me 5 minutes. Now anyone that's played Sonic 2 would know that's not overly impressive, but here, everything just went very smoothly. Okay, it wasn't problem-free as there was 1 or 2 instances of force feeding that impeded progress, but the stages have a lot of runways to burn it all off, and the Ozempic monitors are becoming even more generous. I mean, if we wanted to pad this zone at another 30 seconds, I got slightly stuck here due to Tails getting peckish off screen, meaning I couldn't jump on these boxes, but these springs worked pretty well to lose it just as quick. So now let's hope Oil Ocean Zone can yield similar results. Well, it sort of did. I'm not sure if it's because the level design was a bit less ring heavy or if I was just locking in, but this zone also sped by. It was a bit more problematic as I think Tails' appetite was also starting to kick in, and the added weight can quickly get you stuck to the bottom path. I thought I wasn't gonna, given I was stuck in the oil with no way to jump out, until I realized that running in oil is still running, and it was also more effective than just burning fat in general. It was then I embraced my American demographic and came to love oil, and used it to blast through Acts 1 and 2. We even had a supersonic showdown for the boss fight. That then takes us into our last two zones with Metropolis and Wing Fortress. Final Zone exists, yeah, but there's no rings by default, which, spoiler warning now, makes for a very anticlimactic ending. But without thinking too hard on that, we'll deal with my least favourite zone. Now, sporting 3 acts because why not? Metropolis Zone is here, and to welcome us with loving arms. Or claws, in this case. You know what? I actually think I had the most Sonic 2 experience here. Other than getting stuck in these cogs in Act 3, Metropolis Zone was just annoying. Every time the game fed me with rings and that sweet box of life, I thought, yeah, it is Supersonic time. And then a slicer or a crab meat decided to remind me what game I was playing. Metropolis Zone really is a rock and a hard place at the same time, as here, there is no winning, with the challenge being both avoiding rings and holding onto the ones you already have. I tried playing slow and steady, but that got me nowhere. I tried playing brisk and reaction-based, and that got me nowhere. And yet it still wasn't Hilltop Zone, amazingly. That was genuinely not fun. But we waddled through all 3 acts and busted up Robotnik once again. The boss fights really aren't worth mentioning much, as there's always an Ozempic right before them, so thankfully we never have to tackle any of these at a reduced mobility. Sky Chase followed that and was about as exciting as Sonic Labyrinth. This really is just a scrolling wallpaper. I could comment about the excess of rings and enemies, but there really is nothing here. So on to Wing Fortress Zone, which I also anticipated putting up for a fight, but again, every line of rings we got launched through against our will, there was an Ozempic monitor waiting to undo the damage. And given I am a true Sonic gamer, I know the shortcut in Wing Fortress, so it was straight onto the boss fight and send us onto the Death Egg Zone. The final stage really isn't a lot to discuss outside the base game. We don't have any rings here, so calories aren't our concern, but mortality still is as we carefully fight Silver Sonic without taking any hits. Which if you've been playing Sonic 2 for as long as I have, you likely know when and when not to jump at it. Then there's the Death Egg robot, which is more easy to get hit by than it is to hit it. And while getting the emeralds netted me some continues, the trial and error of dieting also had me somewhat nervous. Too many slip-ups and we'd be back at the title screen with all of our hard work undone. Even with prior experience in this game, there was nothing but fear going into these fights. My hands were shaking this whole time, and at this point, I was out of continues as well as stomach space. So with my last few lives, I knew I had to play this the safe way. And even then, one wrongly timed jump is an instant death. Knowing the stakes, I locked in, timed my jumps, and made sure to hightail it as far away from him as I could before he launched his arms at me, and 12 hits later, we can call this sodium-filled challenge over, as Sonic 2 XL had been beaten. From a gameplay perspective, it was nice to clamber through the first few zones getting the emeralds, incorporating Supersonic as part of the game plan, and then having a much easier ride towards the end. But my god, did some of these zones and levels test my patience and pathfinding. I know Hilltop Zone is where I really struggled, but even Chemical Plant Zone at times had me in a headlock, where if it weren't for the ease of access life monitors, we'd be seeing that title screen more often. But you guys came to see me suffer getting too obese, and while that's a hilarious sentence to say out loud, Final Zone wasn't exactly an exciting ender. Well, there is always 2 players. I came here like a Sonic ball.